We are so excited to have Lee Eclov on Book of a Week on Social Church today to discuss his new book, Feels Like Home. Thank you so much for your time, Lee.
Thank you, David. It's such a privilege to be speaking to you from halfway around the world.
Oh, it's brilliant. Thank you so much. So, before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself, Lee.
Well, I'm a pastor of about 40 years. My wife and I live in the northern suburbs of Chicago. I pastor a church that robbed its name from Great Britain. It's the Village Church of Lincolnshire, or Lincolnshire. And it's a church of about 200 folks on a Sunday morning. Yeah. I have pastored here over 21 years. Yeah. And that follows a long 14-year season in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, and then education and work and some pastoring here in Illinois as well. So I grew up in a small town, a rural community, and was privileged enough to grow up in a Christian home and a great church. So even though it was little and rural, I'm very indebted to my church. So my wife and I have one son. His name is Anders. Yeah. He represents our Swedish heritage, and that's our family.
Oh, brilliant. So how did you come to write this book, Feels Like Home?
I aspired when I was a younger pastor, like many, to someday see a church grow big. Yeah. And God put me in a church that has a really high turnover. We have people coming and going all the time, sometimes 20% of our church turnover a year. Yeah. So there was a side where it looked like it was growing because we were always having new people, but on the other side, it never got bigger. And that was very discouraging to me. Yeah. Well, gradually, as I kind of was forced into this place of rethinking what is a successful church, that it has really nothing to do with its size, it started reshaping my way of thinking about church. And where that has taken me is, I guess the big picture would be, we think far too much about a church as an organization, especially as church leaders. Yeah. And of course it is in some sense. You do have to deal with structure, with budgets, with programs and things like that are all organizational. But the fact is that in the Bible, the church is rarely talked about in organizational terms. You have a little bit of it in Acts, where they're trying to solve some, problems of, diversion and so forth. But in the Bible, the church is God's family. Yeah. And that's not even a metaphor for the church. That is the literal truth. We are God's family. And as I worked in this congregation and I thought about the others I'd served, what came to me is when we think of the church as home, as family, that really changes some things in how we come at doing church. Yeah. It's a different thing. Yeah. And that was the germ of this way of thinking about life, and then I got the chance to tell other people about it through this book.
Yeah, brilliant. I guess that's a real way that the external outside world has crept into the church, right? In terms of business, everything's measured with numbers, isn't it?
True. That's right.
Rather than measuring depth.
We like the management books, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a place for that. I've read them too, but you're exactly right. The corporate model of the church and the word today is metrics. Yeah. And often the word is in my mind kind of a foul word, because we're going to measure the church by things we can count. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that is no family would do that. Yeah. No family would say, well, we're a better family than you because we have 4 kids and you only have 3. Yeah. Or, we have more rooms in our house or something. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. We would never think of a family like that. Yeah. But we do that to our churches.
Where has this historically got into the church, do you think, Lee? How has this happened?
Well, I do think it's a corporate infection that has come to us.
Yeah.
You know, when you think of historically, you think of a town, a little village somewhere. There's a church. The church I grew up in, there was really no thought of how we're going to get our church bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone was a farmer. You know, nobody moved.
Yeah.
Everybody had their church. Nobody.
Yeah.
It was just never crossed our mind. How can we get our church bigger? You know, we thought about evangelism, but it wasn't relative to growth.
Yeah.
And I think it's when we moved into, when churches were in cities, even when I was young, and you think here I was in the Chicago area in college. To my recollection, the largest church in Chicago was probably 1,000 people, if that.
Yeah.
And now we have, I always say I live in the land of the giants. I'm surrounded by churches that are in multiples of that.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily bad. I mean, God is in that, at least in many cases, I think.
Yeah.
But it really leads us, this entrepreneurial side of church leadership, to say, well, how else are we going to know if we're good or not if we don't count?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible model of measuring church effectiveness.
Yeah. How does church fellowship truly become a holy family, Lee?
Oh, that's such a great question. There's a mistake that's easy to make. If you're in a smaller church, you naturally are close to one another, right? You know everybody's name, all those things. And you can mistake that we have really a good church home. And it might well be. But the real test of a church family is how well do we love each other when we don't like each other very much? How well do we love somebody who walks in who's not part of our tribe? Do we bring them in? I think that the things that we do, one, as a pastor, I need to preach on loving one another in depth. Take it past those specific words. Like, for example, in Colossians 3, Paul says to put on these various virtues and over them all put on love. Those are all very self-sacrificing virtues, mercy, compassion, things like that. They cost us something. And we have to teach our people, and we have to practice as pastors, costly love for one another, when we just get tired of each other. I think we also have to, in our churches, show how much we value the one. In our church where the names change a lot, it's a chore, but we have to know everybody's name. I try to know names by the second time I meet somebody, and I have to work at it. How can you say you're a family if you don't know their names? So that's another thing. I think meals, small churches do meals all the time. That's important. You sit and eat with somebody, you get to know them and their kids and stuff. So there's things like that that I could go on, but there's a lot of things you can do and that churches do, some naturally, some are just natural. It's not new things that build this sense of us being family.
You've personally experienced this shift, haven't you, when you started to focus on your church's family? What were the implications for you personally and as a pastor as well, Lee?
Well, the first was this realization, if I keep thinking about our church size, I'm going to ruin myself. I dealt with depression on a couple occasions because I didn't feel we measured up. I think that a turning point for me, interestingly, was at there was a process in our church where a team of people were working on what they called our alignment strategy. And alignment is an organizational term to say, what's our mission, and does everything we do line up with that mission? Well, that's very corporate speak. When you just hear that, you think, oh yeah, that comes out of a management book somewhere. It's not, and it's not contrary to Scripture by any means, but it's just that was going on, and I was increasingly agitated about this because there were, we're gonna take all these steps and have all these charts, and man, I hated it, and I was getting nasty about it, and I thought, what, Lee, what is your problem here? What is the big deal, you know? And I was praying about it, and I was in turmoil. I didn't know, you know, who to talk to about this. And one day, it just kind of clarified for me. The fact is that by personality, I don't think this is theological or any such thing. It was just by personality. I am not particularly motivated by the big mission goal. And I don't mean that biblically speaking, but just, you know, you have to have a mission statement, and you have to have those things. I've done them. We've got one. It just means nothing to me. It doesn't have any motivating muscle. And I thought, well, what is it then if it's not that? For me, I thought, I prize environment over the endeavor. And when I thought of the environment, and I thought immediately, well, what's the environment? Well, it's home. That's what I prize. I want to pastor a church where I am helping people to find that the church is their home. And when I got that, all this turmoil sort of settled. I went to my church leaders. I said, this is what I'm thinking. They said, yes, that's exactly what we think. You know, that's what people say when they walk into this place. It feels like home. That's where it all started.
Brilliant. How do you deal with it when somebody then leaves the church and it's like one of your brothers or sisters leaving the family? What practical steps have you got to sort of support that process, Lee?
Boy, I hate that, David. That is so hard on me. First of all, it frightens me to have to make the phone call to somebody I haven't seen. It's one of the things I can hardly think of anything in the ministry that I find harder than that, because I'm afraid I'm going to hear rejection. You know, there's a reason why they left. Now, it could be as simple as it's too far for us to drive with our little kids. You know, there's good reasons why people change, even when they stay in the community. But I think what I've tried to do is to bless them. If I can speak to them, I will, you know, give them my best. I will pray for them. If I can't speak to them, I will write a handwritten note. In our services, I'm a big believer in benedictions. I give the benediction to every service. I usually sing them, actually, but in the benediction that we draw from God's word to Aaron, you know, the Lord bless you and keep you. I will write that in every note. I try to keep the door open to bring grace to the situation. And, you know, that's about it. It's trying not to feel personally rejected. You know, it would be inappropriate not to feel sad, because, as you said, this is a brother or sister. I mean, you should feel sad. But to not draw a line where they could never come back, or if you saw them on the street, you'd feel awkward. I don't want to, even though I feel like giving them a piece of my mind. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, of course. Okay, that's good. Share with us about the 5-15 rule that you've implemented in your church for welcoming new people that walk into the church.
That's such an interesting thing. Last summer, my wife and I were on a little trip, and we were in this hotel. And I meant to take the elevator to the first floor, but instead I went to the basement. And the basement is where the laundry is, and where the workers gather, and all that. You know, guests aren't supposed to be there. And the elevator opened, and before me on the wall was this huge sign. It was probably, I don't know, 6 foot across. It was a big sign. And it said the 15/5 rule, 15/5 rule. And it said, and I don't have it in front of me, but it said something like, when you are within 15 feet of a guest, smile, make eye contact. When you're within 5 feet, greet the guest, and, you know, smile to them. And I stood and looked at this thing. The elevator door tried to close, and I pushed it open. The maid tried to get onto the elevator. I said, wait, I said, this is really good. She's looking at me like I'm crazy. I got to take a picture of this. And I said, I'm going to take this back to my church. And then she thought I was crazy. But I have passed that sign on. I sent that picture to the church, even while we were on vacation. I said, we're going to do this. And we have a couple of small TV monitors in our foyer that we put announcements and things up on, and we always put up one of the pages that go through that is just 15/5. So it's like a code to our people. Don't forget this. The visitor doesn't know what that is. But we know.
That's
and
really
it's
good.
Worked.
It's brilliant.
It's been great because, people look at that and they go, okay, I got to get out of my head. I got to get out of my own self. Break away from my friend here and go talk.
That's really good.
Most of the time they do it.
That's brilliant. If you've had a family attending the church for a couple of weeks, what process have you got to, at what stage do you begin to welcome into the family? Do they become members? Like, have you got something actually tangible in place that transitions people from becoming a visitor to a member?
That's a really good question. It's hard because people don't kind of come on the same track. You have some people who are Christians. They know very clearly what they're looking for, and they're going to try 5 churches or something. You got somebody else who hasn't been in church forever, and they walk in, and it's all these people. Well, it's not all. It sounds like there's lots. There's not lots. They might show up. You never know on a small church when somebody's actually going to come. I wish I did more of this. I would typically phone somebody who is new if they gave us a phone number. We pass a pad in the service, our friendship register, and we ask all our folks to sign it. And they can tell us things like they're signing up for a dinner or whatever. But guests may sign that. Many don't. You've probably been in places where you just like to stay anonymous for a little while, and I understand that. But if they sign it, then I always write a personal note, handwritten, if they give me an address, and thank them for coming. Once they come a couple times, we are small enough that I kind of got an eye out for them. Then in the foyer, if I see them, I will be very purposeful about introducing them to somebody else. Tom and Jane, I'd like you to meet Bill and Mary here. And I'll stand there as they start talking, and then while they're engaging, I just walk away.
That's
Figure,
good,
okay, see what happens here. And we look for ways to just initiate sort of personal connections rather than programmatic stuff, because a program, like we're always going to do this on the first Sunday and this in the fourth Sunday, like that doesn't work very well, and we don't have enough visitors to say like every month we'll have a visitor lunch or things like that. So we have to do it on a really personal basis.
That's good. When I first learnt about your book, Lee, one of the first things that went through my mind is how much of a blind spot being a welcoming church can be. And I was thinking, in my experience, probably the churches and the pastors that need your book are probably the ones that feel that they belong to a welcoming church. Is that your experience as well, Lee?
Right.
Can this be a really big blind spot for churches and for pastors?
You're so right. A church consultant told me once an interesting thing. He says, no matter how big or small your church is, if you start talking to them about, say, building a building and that might bring in more people or some such thing, they don't want that. People don't want their churches bigger as a rule. And they feel like it's really great the way it is in many cases, not always. And there's also this crazy problem that people simply, almost literally, don't see a visitor. They just don't see them. And it's like they're phantoms or something. Also, I can't remember, there's nothing I hear so often from visitors who come to us who visited multiple churches, try and find a church. Nothing is said nearly so often as, we went to XYZ church and nobody said hello. That's what they say. Nobody said hello. Maybe the greeter at the door did, that kind of thing where it's, just a courtesy. But there was no one who made connection. And I'm sure that's because, it's not because the people of God in that church don't care. They don't see.
Yeah.
And that's what was kind of cool about that 15-5 thing.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to open your eyes, folks.
That's good. Yeah.
We've got to open our eyes.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Lee, I've really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time. What is the best way?
Thank you, David. This was fun.
Thank you, Lee. What is the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Well, I have a website through which I get email. That's easy, and it's a pretty easy website to find because I believe I am the only person in the world with my name.
Brilliant.
So my website is just leeeclov.com.
Brilliant.
That has, how to write to me, but also has some articles and things I've written. I've done a lot of writing, especially for pastors, and I did quite a lot about preaching, but now also about the more pastoral, the shepherding role. That's my real passion, is helping pastors be good shepherds. Yeah, so that would be a good place, leeeclov.com.
Brilliant. And we'll put the link to your website and to your book as well in the description below, Lee. Once again, thank you so much for your time. We wish you all the best with your book, and we're really excited to see how it's going to be used.
Well, thank you, David. You're very kind, and what a privilege it is to talk to you across the pond.
Oh, thank you so much, Lee.